go.
Welcome to the BYOB podcast. Today I have a colleague, someone I've worked with, someone who's been a client, and I've been a client of his, so we've got quite a long and varied relationship. We have Mr. John Perry, who is also helping me with my business at the moment. He's one of my coaches. And he has got a few companies, but Being Investable is his primary mechanism to help people like myself, entrepreneurs. And I'd like to welcome John to the show. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Andrew.
So what I'd like to do for a start is just explain what Being Investable is. You've got a few organizations, and then we'll take people through your varied business and business life where you've been working for others back in the day, and then you've done lots of businesses, and now you help other people start and scale businesses. So let's start with your current position, and then we'll go back and explore the past. So tell people what it's like you do now.
Yeah, okay, so I started Being Investable because when I help people go through the fundraising journey and solidifying their business model so they can attract team members and funders, investors and funders, I found that most people, including myself, have internal blockers, unseen action blockers that they allow themselves, really, they're like a boundary that they've set that they can't see. So it becomes something that makes them uninvestable because we can all see other people more easily than we can see ourselves. So investors know what they're looking for, and if they don't think if they don't relate to the founder or the CEO or really doesn't matter who you are, if you're a book author and the publisher doesn't think they can rely on you to follow through, you just won't get investment and you won't get team members. And so Being Investable focuses on the personal aspects of entrepreneurship.
And I think I've been through some of that journey with you, and I really relate to the content, being someone who's raised money before. And for those who don't really understand the market, and haven't ever gone through this journey, maybe are thinking about doing it in the future. When you say they invest in the person, because most people think they invest in the idea, it's all about the idea or the product. But you're going to set them straight, I think, in the next conversation.
Obviously, the idea is a big part of it because you can't just be investable. You can't get people to invest in something unless you can show also that their investment is going to grow and the investor will get a reward. So that's where the idea comes in and a business model. But it's not enough on its own. They say people invest in people. That's the key.
Well,
and no one agrees with that I come across in the investment world.
Yeah, and being around with you for a long time, I've seen this many times. Is a great team can take an average idea and make it do really well because they can pivot and change.
Yeah.
Whereas a team that's not performing or not reliable with the best idea will probably fail. So that's why they're looking for the individuals.
Exactly. Yeah.
So and you've been doing that for quite a while, and you obviously invest in businesses yourself. You coach people to gain investment, but that's from lots of years of experience now. But I'm sure you had to earn that experience somehow. So take me way back. I want to hear about your first paid job. So if it was a lemonade stand, or were you always an entrepreneur? Like how did this start out for you?
Yeah. Funnily enough, it was
Really?
a lemonade
Was it?
stand. Not really, but it was sweets.
Yeah.
Confectionery. My father suggested it to my sister and I that we would set up a sweet stand for the kids in the neighbourhood. And he was our only customer, as it turned out, because he had a sweet tooth. So he thought, but nonetheless, it was the first thing. And then the second Second thing after university was I got a job in advertising.
Mm.
Oh, actually, during university, I did do, but it wasn't a job. I did do design work for local boutiques in South Yarra,
Really?
and yeah, we did. I didn't do the designs, but I had someone who did do the graphic design. So we did their brochures and swing tickets and things like that, and just job by
Mm.
job, and got paid for it, obviously. And then and then I got a real job in
Yeah.
advertising
What did you study?
as an
Were,
account
were
exec.
you studying, business or marketing, or how did you get into that?
I was I did economics and
Mm.
politics at Monash, but when I got the job, the guy who hired me in the company, big advertising agency, said, well, "We don't care about your degree. We just cared that you had the energy and the follow through to
Yeah,
finish
yeah,
it,
yeah.
and that you had been doing these business with the local
Mm.
people in the shops that I just
Yeah.
described. That's what impressed him most." Yeah, and so no, I didn't have marketing. I mean, I didn't understand marketing at all, really,
Marketing is not. I mean,
until I
you
was.
don't need it for advertising per se. I mean, you did other things like filmmaking and even studying history and those sorts of things. It teaches you how to think and how to apply yourself and those sorts of things at university. So advertising is quite a creative
Yeah,
pursuit. Mm.
exactly. How to apply yourself. That's exactly the
Mm.
point right there. Yeah.
And did you? And how long did you do that for? Did you stay at the agency long?
I worked in advertising for 2.5 years, and then I went overseas for six
Mm.
months, but stayed away for 4 years.
What are those? London? Was it the typical London thing at the time?
Yeah, London and Europe, and then I end up in America. And I had a. It's a long story what happened in America, but I ended up coming back to Australia and working in Rank
Mm.
Xerox, because by that time I had no track record and no resume. So
Great training at that
I
company, I
was,
hear. Very good training company.
yeah, really really good
Mm.
training. Um, and
Isn't it interesting how like companies get a reputation for training like that? Like I've heard it from many sources, people saying there's certain companies back in the day. I think IBM was pretty good back in the day as well, of really good grad
yeah,
training
yeah,
programs.
yeah.
Mm.
Well, funnily enough, I was telling your friends that you introduced me to just yesterday about the system, the sales system that Rank
Yeah,
Xerox had,
yeah.
where they could basically prepare you for getting your monthly
Mm.
target. And your sales manager could just look at it and say, "You're not going to get your target," or "You're going to get your target," or "You need to do this, that, and the other thing to get your target." So it was pretty much, I became a systems person
Mm.
there because, as Deming said, who turned around the automotive industry through installing systems in thinking in Toyota, just in time, and
Mm.
the circle, what's it called, the champion circle, things like that. Was a systems thinker, and so it became, yeah, like everything's a system really, and our thinking itself is a system. But if you apply it to business, and in the end, that's what happens in a business model, or any kind of thing that's going to succeed has systems to help it be measured by.
Mm.
Um, this is not happening or that's not happening. Us KPIs, for example, are
Yeah.
subsystems, and of a bigger system. Like you have a business model, which is a bigger system, and the idea and the market and all of that is a bigger system. So everything's got to serve, KPI is like a measurable
Yeah.
thing, like, yeah, you know what a
Mm.
KPI is. And so that's how it happened. And I was working in Rank Xerox, and that's right, and I met Arthur, who had an idea. He was a software engineer, and he had an idea of his own, and it was in an area that I thought was really great, and I said, "Oh, let's do it," because when I was in America, I'd read about uh, entrepreneurial investment and venture capital and so on, and I rang up. I rang up a venture capital company in New York and said, "Look, I'm a student from Australia," which is not entirely true at that point. But
Student of the industry, maybe.
so, I've never stopped being a student, I guess
Yeah.
you could say. So anyway, I said, I need, how does all this work? And he sent me some material, and and then I realized, oh, that's amazing. That's something I could do. And then when I got back to Australia, I'd forgotten about it. And then I said to Arthur, oh, look, we can raise venture capital. And of course, nobody knew I was talking about. There were no venture
Yeah.
capital
What
companies
what
in
year was
Australia.
this in? Just for the audience.
This was the late
Yeah.
90s. And
Pre-internet, you know.
so there were some ideas about in early 2000s. We built our company and sold it in the early
So
2000s,
tell
I
me
think.
about the business and what was the software?
So it was educational
Mm.
software. So it was distributed on DVDs. Actually, it was before the internet did
Yeah,
exist,
it's
but
very small.
it was only in Web 1, so you couldn't present anything
Mm.
on it. You couldn't do a video on it or load up a training module. So we would ship them all over the world. We had sales to schools, actually, to secondary
Mm.
schools in all over Australia, New Zealand, 4 states in the US, and London. We couldn't get anywhere else in the UK, but that was a pretty big
Yeah, that's big.
market, and we were making about, when we got bought, we were making about $30,000 a month turnover, and it wasn't an expensive business to
Mm.
run. Um, so there was massive profit. So we were acquired, and I got a good payout because I was a third
Mm.
owner, and we'd managed to do it all with one round of funding um, uh, from a very nice businessman in Queensland, actually, and we had we had a terrible legal structure. I didn't know anything about
Yeah.
legals then and
You
structure.
learn by
So
experience,
that's
don't you?
one thing.
You learn by
Sorry.
experience.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the things about systems that I now know. It's that one of the subsystems you've got to have is a good legal
Mm.
structure. But anyway, it makes a very big difference for onboarding capital, and also when you come time to sell or exit. Um, would have got much more money if I'd known that then, what I know now. But
That's life.
anyway, I made money.
So
So everybody was
so
happy.
let's sort of just go back one step. So you working at Rank Xerox, you've got a stable paycheck. You've got a friend who's got an idea. Maybe you've heard about venture capital. So that's a big leap, though. I mean, going from a paycheck to
It is, but don't forget, I'd left a stable job in advertising in
mm,
earlier, and with my degree, and looking like, yeah, I can just be in Melbourne, a reasonably privileged middle class life, and I can just
get going like this forever. Yeah.
continue going to Portsea and going to Mount
Mm,
Buller, and buy my own boat and my own chalet and things. But so when I left for 6 months for a holiday and stay away 4 years, I more or less left everything.
Mm.
And so I was like, oh. And then I learned, and then I realized I'm starting to think towards the end, well, look, what am I going to do? And that's when I found out about venture capital, and I thought that's when I thought this can be the solution, because I already had an idea that I was an entrepreneur because don't forget I'd done the sweet shop,
Yeah.
sell the lemonade stand, and we'd done the swing tickets.
Yeah.
So I thought naively thought, well, I can do this, and that's really the main
Yeah.
thing. Like
The
you
belief.
you do have to believe in yourself, even if it's naive to start with. As long as when you find out you're naive, you don't
Yeah,
give
yeah,
up.
yeah. Exactly. Well, this is what's interesting is that you didn't you weren't building a life that you were stuck to. If you'd kept in advertising and then you bought a house and you got married and your kids or whatever the pathway is, it's hard to get out because you've baked in costs and people know what you do, and then you want to leave and do something else, and people are like, oh, you're crazy, what are you doing? You've got a good life. And so because it's not like you got a disastrous, no opportunity. You're doing great, but by breaking that and by doing lots of different things, you've automatically set yourself for building resilience and hustle and making
Yeah,
things
you're
work.
setting yourself up.
Yeah,
Once you break the
breaking the mold.
mold,
That's a good question. Yeah,
and it's not well. You did it
yeah, I
yourself.
know.
You left corporate. You left corporate, and it's pretty attractive corporate life because you've got good pay. You get long holidays, and when you come back, the job still exists. Um, there's plenty of parties and plenty of
Yeah,
grog and
lots of people,
you
good
know
projects. Yeah, it's pretty.
lots of people and everything's good. It's like why would you leave it? But I just sort of had this idea. Oh, there's something overseas that I've got to go and
Mm,
explore overseas, and a lot of people exit and go to London to
yeah,
work for a while or New York, and so it didn't seem too stupid because initially I thought I'm only going for six
yeah,
months and then I'm back and I'll just go back to the company. And they said to me when I left, "Oh, come and see
yeah. When
us
you get back,
when you get back, and we'll see if we can fit
yeah,
you in." Like, so I was thinking, all right, so I'm
pretty good.
I'm
Yeah,
good.
I think it's. I was saying this to someone else on my podcast. Is that I feel like entrepreneurship's almost a calling that you can't say no to. It's an
Yeah,
exploration, like exploring overseas and exploring new things and pushing yourself. And if you want comfort, you're not going to seek entrepreneurship because it's a rocky road. But it's
exactly.
it's just something you can't help, I think. And I'm curious about that.
Yeah,
Mm. You're an explorer. I mean, you
but not everybody can make the shift
no.
though, because as you know, one of the people we tried to
Mm.
help together go down the capital raising path was just uncoachable, just wouldn't
Mm.
shift from the comfort zone, and his comfort zone was his own
Mm.
thinking what he was thinking
Mm.
was correct, believing his own thinking. It's the worst thing you can do is believe what you think, because there's always something
Yeah.
better. It's like it's like believe what you think. Obviously, I'm not talking about being crazy, being a schizophrenic. I'm just saying, like, there's a limit to what you
Got to be
can
open. You got to be
believe.
open to new knowledge and
You've got to
yeah.
be open. There
Well,
you
one
go.
thing I say to,
That's
to people is entrepreneurship is a battle of the mind, not the market.
There you
Because
go. That's
because if
it.
you're fixed in your thinking and you won't react to the change of the market, that's how you go broke. But if you're always adaptable,
That's
then
right.
you'll always have a
Yeah,
market.
and that's a personal
Yeah.
thing. Yeah,
So
yeah. Someone was saying to me this morning, something similar was the the opposite. Something like the the problems are not what's going on outside. It's how we respond to them and the choices we make.
100%, exactly that.
So the other way around, the
Mm,
opportunity, it works the other way with
mm.
opportunities.
Well, if
Yeah,
you think about things like say, entrepreneurship now, if you look at Netflix, they started out mailing DVDs. The competitor was Blockbuster, and then they pivoted. And if you read the story, the detailed story, they pivoted into online when it was unpopular, untried, and they had to create a whole new market. And having move into sorry, it's Netflix I'm talking about. So when they moved into doing the online video streaming, they were the leaders, but now they're challenged because everyone else is doing it, but they're not pivoting. They're just going, oh well, we'll just put advertising in. They're not being revolutionary, because as companies get stable, they get comfortable, like a person gets comfortable in a corporate job, and you lose the
Yeah,
ability to
yeah,
take
yeah,
the
yeah.
risk with new things. You're not listening to the market.
Yeah,
You just want things to stay the same, and life's not like that. So
yeah. You wonder what their future would be if you look at it like that. Whether they could, who could buy them? It'd be just like Apple has enough money to buy them. Amazon has enough money to
do
buy
their own
them.
one. So how long were you in the software business for, just by the way? How many years were you working on it?
Oh, 5 years.
That's a pretty
Yep.
good exit turnaround. That's a pretty tradition.
And then we, yeah, it was a pretty small company. But don't forget, uh, online revenue wasn't
Yeah,
available
that's right.
then. So nowadays, the same thing would generate way more revenue. Um,
Pretty good first venture though. Successful 5-year exit for profit. That's great.
yeah, yeah, and then it was not long after that I came back to Melbourne, and one way or another became interested in the environment. And then, because I'd always been someone interested in the oceans and the seas from swimming and diving, I knew that there was pressure on the sea stock, and so we decided, well, let's another we, not the same guys I did the software with, but another team, and we did two species of fish species, separate, different businesses, same team, different businesses, different investors, and the overall thing there was creating a supply of that species to the market, the food market, at the time when the demand was going up and sea stocks were going down. So the price was going up basically. So you had a very very good macroeconomic position to be marketing selling into. So really it was yeah, that they were good businesses, and they each got, the first one got bought out by the investor group, um, and then the second one we sold to a Malaysian food company that was vertically integrated from food to food processing to sales into Asia. So yeah, we made really good money out of those two. Um,
So it's a different, very, very different business. Like, did you do many rounds of investment with those? Was it, you know,
yeah, so they both had, so the first one had 3 rounds of investment. So we had the first round of investment to actually build the plant, which was very gutsy of the investor, because there was 48 down months. I remember telling him, you'll have to wait 48 months before we show cash
at
flow,
all?
before we show cash
Yeah, not
flow,
even profit.
let alone cash flow
Yeah.
positive. Yeah, because you have to build the thing. Like, you can't, nowadays we talk about an MVP, so you can build a software product in 6 months and get some customers quite quickly. You can't build a fish processing, fish growing thing without spending hundreds of
Yeah.
thousands,
Yeah.
and then growing them, and then getting them ready, and then shipping them. It's like a huge undertaking. So, and then the second one, the second species, which was just a bit further down the river in Tamar River in Launceston, north of Launceston, was even more expensive to get started. But we started off straight away there. We had a partner. The first one we had the University of Tasmania partnering because they had the technology and we commercialized it. The second one we had a breeding partner, someone who had already done the breeding, but just couldn't find the land to where you could build the grow out. We had the land because we had the state government and the council, particular council on side, because we'd already had a success with the other one. So anyway, short story. That was 3 rounds of investment.
Was it angel and then
And
into VC or?
no, I've never done it. What they call, well, it was angel really, but people who don't think of themselves as investors, so they wouldn't call themselves angel or anything. Just individuals who understood, say in the first, well, in both of them, that the sea stocks are being highly under pressure and that demand is going up for seafood as a source of protein, both in Australia and around the Pacific Rim, and could see easily, oh, that'll work. Or not easily, really, but some could
There's
see it.
logic there.
And those, it's just logical. And so it's a lot easier than trying to convince someone now than your software can fit into a global market. And when that, yeah, it's a lot, it's kind of, I wouldn't like to say it's easy, but it's easy when you've got an obvious problem like food shortages or, yeah, it's a good place to sit yourself. And that's what happened with the third one we did. Well, that was 3, but I don't count the sea businesses, the aquaculture businesses, 2. I count them as 1, but because they're in the same industry. But the third one we did was in automotives, and that was kind of obvious too because have you ever been to Bangkok and ridden on a tuk-tuk?
Plenty of times, at least 20 times.
Yeah, exactly. Well, those things are inherently dangerous. They're basically a modified motorbike, and the government of Thailand wanted to do something smarter, and they have a lot of automotive manufacturers manufacturing there, but they only own a fraction of the business. The Thai government or Thai owners, and they wanted to own a majority, and so we said, well, look, we'll provide all the technology from Australia, and at that time, that's around about 2014, 15. I'm thinking, yeah, when even the Liberal government's thinking of closing down even a Labor government is thinking of closing down the funding, the extra funding, and for the automotive industry here to work, and because it was getting a lot of grants and things. And then when the Liberal government came in, it was like they just closed it down because they were very short-sighted. I'm not really making a statement, a political statement here. It's just politicians just don't understand the flow-on effects, what's called the flow-on effect of
whole industry disappearing.
business. It nearly collapsed Geelong because all the small businesses supplying parts. Anyway, long story short, that wasn't very hard to raise funds for because we had the unions on side because they were thinking, well, we can at least do something with all the technology here, and we'll be manufacturing here initially and shipping it there for being assembled. And then eventually, the idea was after 5 or 6 years or longer, they would buy Thais would buy the company and then manufacture over there. But it got to a point where it was so hard to deal with them, the Thais, I mean, and the unions. Oh, it was just a hopeless business model. So they bought us out basically. So we got not a lot of money, but we got money for our trouble, and and then they messed it up because they didn't want Australians involved, and then they didn't have the
Yeah.
skills. So it was just a real pity. It was like New Guinea got rid of the Australians too soon and just couldn't manage
Mm.
themselves. Anyway, that making a few broad brush statements here, but it serves the entrepreneurial story because you can't be an entrepreneur in a circumstance in a system that doesn't
Yeah.
support you. So if you've got a system like this C stocks going down and demand going up, and that's a global food system supporting you, that's something you can work
Mm.
in. If you've got a political system in Thailand and Australia that's not supporting you in the car industry, you just can't
Yeah.
fight against
Well,
that.
it's like if the environmental, and the government belief at the time was that we shouldn't be doing man-made stocks of fish, then you wouldn't be able to get that business up because there wouldn't be the support to do
Exactly.
it. And so you have to have a climate that is favourable to the idea, but also all of those different things like you've got to be able to raise funds, you've got to be able to get the partners, the
Yeah,
council.
like I think you did masters at Swinburne, right? So I believe
Mm.
so. Doctor, the professor, what was his name there?
Merits.
He recently died. Um, anyway, whatever his name is, he was one of Lauren's
Mm.
mentors. Anyway, he wrote a paper. I read a lot of his papers. He was a systems thinker, and he basically said that wrote a paper which is peer reviewed very highly, that you can't succeed in unless the environment or the circumstances or the system or the political circumstances support you. It's just very, very hard.
Mm.
So that's worth bearing in mind for any budding
Mm.
entrepreneur. You can't fight against, unless you're in America, for example. Like, you can get so much capital
Yeah.
there. Money can fight against everything. Like Elon Musk's a
Yeah,
good
he's a good
example of
example.
that. Who would have thought you could start a car company
In California.
in California when the other car companies existing at that time were cap in hand at the federal government level for money to bail them
Yeah,
out?
correct. Yeah.
Like, just
It's an amazing story, really. If you,
it's an amazing
yeah,
story. And
I don't
so,
think people appreciate how amazing it is, and also starting a rocket company. I mean, that's even harder.
a
I mean,
rocket company.
that's
Oh, did I tell you, Andrew, I'm starting a
I think
rocket
that's a great
company?
idea. It's a great way to lose a
Yeah,
billion
like
dollars.
like we're selling them in around Guy Fawkes night,
You're
in
selling rides on them, or
yeah, like you have to wear goggles and helmets to buy them,
yeah.
safely. But
Do I sit on the outside, or is there a capsule in the inside?
that's right. You've got to be outside, and they can't land on the neighbours. But otherwise, it's called fireworks. I think
It's
people
fine.
call it fireworks, but we're calling it
Yeah, yeah.
rockets.
Got to be in the game.
Anyway,
So tell me a bit
yeah,
more about. So you've done these businesses, and you're obviously never look back at employment again, and then you sort of pivot a little bit from doing business to start helping people to raise capital to get businesses. What was the inspiration for that? Was that just you got sick of people asking and you thought you should charge, or
yeah. People asking, like, I came back from, I was back in Melbourne by that time. We did the car company, and I was so basically I'd been doing business in Brisbane, Tasmania, and Melbourne, and people inevitably ask you, "How did you do
mm.
that?" Like, school friends be like, "John Perry, he's such a ratbag. How how did he do
That's what
that?"
I
And
say
so
to
it'd
about
be
people.
even at school reunions, people are like, "How did you do that, Pezza? How did you do
uh,
that?" And people say, How did you do that?" And now, of course, there's networks and there's VCs and there's huge amounts of
mm,
support. But um, even 5 years ago, How long have we known each other? When you?
At least 12 years, maybe more.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Okay. Um,
Because I raised funds first
yeah.
time about 9 years ago. So,
Oh, that's when. Okay, so that's a good
mm,
example. You knew me through
mm,
somebody, through Lauren,
mm,
and you wanted me to give you an opinion on what you were
mm.
doing, and so if you hadn't, you'd already raised the money, but if you hadn't, I would have said I'll do A, B, C, D. So basically, what I worked out was there's 123 moving parts to be ready to ask for money. And most people do about four of them and then ask for money and then they'll come undone.
Well, we had
Um,
this conversation the other day is that, even after doing a Master's of Entrepreneurship and even after, setting up my own business, when I first raised money, like I made so many mistakes. And, in my second round, my second business that you helped me with, I feel like it was much better managed. But even then, there's probably improvements to be made. It's a difficult thing to do well. I think it's not. I don't think it's that hard to get money per se if you work hard at it, but to do it well so that you can actually keep your shares and exit and have a good potential is exceedingly hard. Exceedingly
yeah,
hard. So, and people underestimate
exactly.
how hard it
And
is.
it's
You
it, it's systems within systems within systems. Like the because where people go wrong is they undervalue or
Mm,
overvalue because they don't have a system to value their company and
mm,
they don't know what they're
mm.
valuing. All the different things in there to value and come to a conclusion. So that if you undervalue, then a sophisticated investor, someone who's done it before, been around the block, will say, "Oh, could take advantage of you." Uh, like the guy in Brisbane who invested in us knew we were naive, but he didn't. He didn't take advantage
Yeah,
of us. Well, he did because he instigated the legal structure we had, which was designed so he would get a tax deduction. So he did, but that wasn't overtly
yeah.
against us.
He's just doing things that make himself
Or
better.
if you overvalue, then people just think, oh well, you're a fool, you're a
Yeah,
greedy fool, and that's what most
most people
people do
overvalue. Yeah,
nowadays. They say, oh, it's going to be the next Google or it's going to be the next Uber, or although I don't hear that much now, do you? Everything used to be the next
yeah.
Uber up to a few years ago. And then, or the next Airbnb or the next something or other. So it's going to make billions, and then it's just missing so many moving
Mm,
parts. Yeah, and then the other thing, the other big one to watch out for, apart from overvaluing or undervaluing, is structuring the
yeah.
shares. So like people ask for preference shares or all these different things that investors can ask for, which they look harmless enough. But when it comes time to exit, for example, one form of them is they get paid before
Mm.
you. So they're like, oh, right, I didn't realize that
Big difference.
because you did, yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's
anyway, there's ways around all that. You just get good advice,
Well, and
basically.
that's the thing is that,
Um,
when the first time I raised money, I just was so keen to get the money that I didn't bother with the detail, which I think a lot of people do. And then, you know, very
Very
common.
common.
And then because
Yeah.
you're keen to do your business and you just believe and think everything's going to work out. But if you don't understand the detail, then, um, you know, when you come to realize the value, that's when it all comes undone. That's when friendships, come unstuck, relationships wither, because, when there's serious amounts of money on the line, people, oh, this is what the shareholders agreement says. This is what our terms and conditions, this is
Yeah.
what our,
They go from someone I follow on LinkedIn, a woman called Kylie Cody Sanchez. Um, she's a investor in America, um, really kick-ass woman. And she said she summarized what you just said. Then, when things go wrong, she said people start covering up, then they start lying, and then they become dishonest. So it works the other way. Like investors start saying, "Oh, but you never told me. You didn't tell me that." And if there's no agreement to the contrary, there's, things, everything becomes disputable, and then um, and then people just say, "Oh, well, you said I'd get my money back." I've had it. Someone I was helping them before they did raise their money before I came along, and they got me involved because one of their investors was saying, "Oh, we want the money back," and I got involved and
Help them, yeah.
just made sure he didn't realize he couldn't do that. But um, that's why you need really good legals and really good agreements and really good understanding, and be explaining to investors the level of risk they're entering into, and have it. If you're doing it on Zoom or if you're doing it face to face, you record it and tell them you're recording it, because later on they say, "I didn't understand the risk," and it's even put in the shareholders agreement at the top in the recitals. The members understand this is an early stage company where the risk of failure exists in the top of the shareholders agreement, you know, or our 4-pager
Yeah.
thing that the general risks and the specific risks, and that's really crucial, and they're selling points. Really, it's hard for people to understand that, but that's how you sell.
Well, I think it's it shows a little maturity if you understand the risk and you're taking people through a proper process. It shows that you know
Exactly.
what you're doing, and I think that that's where people come unstuck, is that they don't want the advice, and they don't want to invest in getting good agreements or good people, and then it doesn't matter for 10 years, and then they sell the business, and all of a sudden it matters a lot.
And then it really
Yeah.
matters. Yeah, it doesn't matter until it matters. Or that founders start off and they own half each, and then one of the founders just happened. I'm not involved in the business, but I did advise them against it really early on because they're friends. That one of the partners has just left and is living in Bali, and I said, "So he's not involved here." Oh, but he's a director, so he's drawing a wage. I'm saying, like,
Wow.
no, that's not right. And he said, "Oh, but he couldn't see why that wouldn't be the case." It's like, what? They'll never get any more investors, because investors would look at it and say, "So someone who's got 25% of the business is not involved at all and is drawing a wage. So, like, how investable is
Yeah.
that?"
Yeah.
It's
And,
not. And that's just because, no, it's not even logical to think that it would be a good idea to do that. So,
And it's and it's
yeah,
it's a lot of people who start businesses are not necessarily business people. I mean, I've studied business, and you've worked, you've done all this through your own efforts. But a lot of people might just, I might be an engineer or a software person or a product person, or I've just got an idea, and they haven't actually, you know, let alone the fine art of investor management and procuring money, but also just the general business nature of things. They just don't know.
yeah,
And so,
yeah,
you can understand how they come on. So they just might not have insurance, or they don't have agreements with their staff, or they don't know,
yeah,
all of these things. There's so many things to learn. And I guess, you've got to surround yourself with a good team. Otherwise, you know, it might not happen, but something goes wrong, and then suddenly it's all over in an instant. You can.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah, it's sad, really, and a lot of the business education that exists supposedly through, say, incubators is very low level. Unfortunately, the incubators, there's some worldwide, like the one, Y Combinator, and a couple in Europe, but I'm not aware of any incubator in Australia that's not staffed by lawyers and other forms of, and they're basically, they're all employees of a fund, and so they've got, they're probably using Harvard documents. That is what they'd be using. Is they're very, there's a number of professors from Harvard who've published things, and they're not businessmen either. They're businessmen. They haven't, the rubber hasn't hit the road. They're academics. So the education is just not very. It's not very. It's not easily won.
Yeah,
So,
it's
but
interesting you say that. That is, there are books on entrepreneurship. I did entrepreneurship masters, and when I did it at Swinburne, everybody who taught had to have run a business, like like
well, there
as
you
in
go.
raise funds and
There you go.
run a business, and so
Yeah, there you
now
go.
it's not. It's run well. Now most of them are run by academics, and
Yeah,
my belief is that in this particular case, in raising funds, if you haven't raised funds, you shouldn't be telling people how to raise funds. Like it's, I've done it.
exactly,
I've done it several
exactly.
times, and I still get you involved in my deals because you've done it far more than
Yeah,
me. I have a level of knowledge, and then there's people who've done it way more than me, and
yeah.
there's so many
Yeah.
ins and outs. And I think that in this case, it's something it's an experiential thing. You need to have the experience doing it. Not all.
And knowing the good advisors, like for example, I use that legal firm that I put
Yeah.
you onto, and I don't try to understand the ins and outs of it. And I remember when we were having a conversation with that the partner or the junior partner in that firm before you actually press the button on it. They were asking like, "Oh, but what about that? Have you thought about this?" So it's really
Mm.
detailed, isn't it? Like it's really
Like, it
detailed.
comes down to language of certain clauses, and you need to know which ones in the 50-page document are the vital ones. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of information to learn. And look, I guess for the people listening, if you don't have to raise funds to start a business. I mean, you can use your own money, you can get money from your family and friends, you can borrow off your home loan. It might be a small enough business you don't need to. But if you do need to raise funds, then, or you do want to for a particular idea, having advice and getting, an understanding of what it takes to run a business and also what it takes to raise funds, um, and even the roles, like you say to me all the time, the CEO's job is to raise funds and regularly, then just understand that before you get in is very useful. Like far before you press the button, I think it's, you learn as
Mm,
much as you can. Would be my
mm,
advice.
mm.
So summarising it, I guess your 40 years of knowledge. If someone comes to you now and says, "Hey John, I've got this idea," what's the first thing you give them as a piece of advice besides don't do it? Or which you might not say that.
Yeah, good question. Um, well, I was saying it to those friends of yours just yesterday. I was saying like it's 100 times harder than than the most difficult thing you've done in your corporate career. So if you don't have it in you, and if and you'll and people hear that and they think, oh no, that's just John exaggerating. But it's 100 times harder than the hardest thing you've ever done, just to raise capital, and then to keep on following through with the business requires more heart and more will and intention than the hardest thing you've ever done, like 100 times harder. So you just have to realize like that one of that's what'll put you under. Like the one of the Y Combinator guys. In fact, I think the original Y Combinator guy um, was saying that founders think that it's competition or lack of funds that kills their business, but most businesses are committed. Most businesses die through suicide, and it doesn't mean they go out and shoot
Mm.
themselves. It just means that the founder just
Yeah,
gives
can't do
up,
it anymore.
says, "I just can't
Mm.
do it, don't want to do it."
It's too hard.
You wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning and think it's not worth
Mm.
it, and it isn't worth it unless you really have a good reason to do it. Like that's why I say to people, I get involved when I can say all the businesses I've done and be like, I'd love to do that. Let's do that. I'd love to
Mm.
do that. If I can say that, then I'm like, right, okay.
Elon Musk actually had a really good comment about that. He said that, when he was starting or, building Tesla, he was like, the probability was that it wasn't going to work and he was going to blow all his money. Like there was
Yeah.
more chance of it failing than succeeding, but he was going to do it anyway. And I go, so having a 5% chance of success and doing it anyway means that you really want to do it for the experience, for the, and you're not saying, oh, well, I want to be rich and sit on an island, have a big yacht. Like that's never a reason to start a business, because the likelihood of that happening and the pain you have to go through and the work you have to do is not worth the yacht at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah, exactly. Well, the other thing I'll say is that even doing it, even if you fail, you'll be far more employable, because you'll learn things about yourself. And sorry, the dogs come into the screen a few times. You naughty boy, you sit there. They want me to take them for a
okay, we're
walk.
almost done.
And they're up on the couch, bullying me into finishing up. So you'll learn about yourself. Like it's the cauldron of small development, personal development, that like nothing
Yeah,
else. You'll learn about yourself.
I was.
It's well worth doing, even to fail. And failings, what the hell's wrong with failing
Yeah, you
anyway?
tried, and that's actually the whole point. I believe as well is you don't start a business to get rich. You start a business to test yourself and to see what you're capable of. And it's the same as running a marathon. I mean, no one runs a marathon because they want to get somewhere. Just jump in your car, But they run
Yeah,
a marathon
exactly.
because they're testing whether they can do it, the training, the commitment, the discipline, and because it's rewarding. And that's the same as business. And it's, to me, that's the essence of it is, I've managed to build a business and I'm quite proud. And just the fact that I've managed to stay around for 10 years and to do it, and you've had several exits, I've had one, is a great thing for my internal pride, let alone anybody else. It's just an internal thing, and
Yeah, exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
All right, we'll wrap up there. But
Yeah, that's a good point to end on. That you do it for yourself. Um, if you can do it for yourself, because you'd love to see the outcome happen, and even if it doesn't happen and the business fails that you've learned, then you've won. Look, come on, get yourself in the screen. Come here, come on, come here.
oh, there you go.
He's a doggy boy, aren't you?
Like there wasn't the elephants coming out of the background.
He's a funny boy, aren't you?
All right, we'll wrap it up, John.
Yeah. All right,
Appreciate
mate.
the time, John. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, take care.
See ya.
Good on you,
Bye.
mate.